Thanks for coming along. We are joined, as always, by Greg Engert, beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group of Food and Wine Sommelier of the Year. The group including Columbia Firehouse in Old Town, also Evening Star Cafe in the Delray neighborhood. Greg, it is always good to see you.
You too.
What's on tap this week?
So this week we have some fresh from draft Victory DirtWolf, which is a fantastic new entry into the local Imperial IPA category. Victory Brewing Company out of Downingtown, Pennsylvania is one of the now classic craft breweries around. Most known probably for Prima Pils, for Hop Devil, and once upon a time for a really delicious Imperial IPA called Hop Wallop, which has for the time being been retired as a year-round beer.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, which was sad for me.
Sad for many people.
For many, because it is obviously an amazing beer. However, once you taste this, it'll make you okay, I think, with that. And the other thing before we even taste this to remember is that just talking to Bill Kowaleski, who's a very good friend of mine, who's one of the owners and founders of Victory Brewing Company, Hop Wallop's not completely gone. They're going to have some occasional releases here and there. It'll pop up at the Downingtown Brew Pub, so another great reason to visit. Particularly on cask, it's an amazing beer. But we'll see what they've come up with here. This has been over a year in research to figure out this exact recipe. So I think you'll like it.
The nose is promising. I'm scared to swirl it because I'm sure I'll slop it all over the place. Oh yeah,
it's fantastic. And to me, it does bear some resemblance to Hop Wallop. One of the things about Hop Wallop was that it was all this intense hop aromatics and bitterness kind of spread over a really crisp, refreshing malt base, basically a Pilsner malt base. And that's what makes it kind of singular in hindsight, but didn't provide quite the wallop that I think people are looking for nowadays, especially maybe aromatically. This still has a really cool kind of clean, refreshing malt base to it. I mean, there's some toasted sweetness there, but it's really fresh and bright on the palate.
I've fawned over Sly Fox last week, and I've fawned over Victory before. I think I've had more kegs of Prima Pils in my kegerator at home than any other beer, and I went so far as to write them an email telling them how much I liked their brewery. It's awesome. They just across the board make good beers.
And if you haven't been to Downingtown to visit the brew pub, you have to go. It's so much fun. It really rules. So, anyways, this beer. What's really cool though is like when Victory decides they're going to do something, they do it 100%, right? So they started thinking about they wanted to play around with new hop varietals. They have amazing connections and relationships with ranchers throughout the Pacific Northwest. You know, Yakima and up into Oregon as well, and Willamette. But they basically started creating pretty much single hop Imperial IPAs under the Ranch series. There were the Ranch R beers, Ranch S. They came down here in keg only. So that was a way for them to really figure out how hops work, how these newer hop varietals would work in their beers and come up with a final blend. It's the same thing they did for Headwaters Pale Ale when they wanted to come up with that just fantastic balanced pale ale they could release year round. They did a series of Pursuit Pale Ales to get there. And so the other thing to remember about Victory is they only use whole cone flower hops, just like Sierra Nevada does. So this also adds a distinctive quality. And so at the end of the day, what they decided upon was a kind of a leaner malt base, which I just remarked upon, and the hops are Chinook, which gives it a little bit of that kind of herbal, earthy, kind of dank, slightly tobacco-ish quality of bitterness. Simcoe, which is big pine, resinous notes, and a little bit of grapefruit. Citra, which is that obviously bold citric fruit, but also has that earthy, almost funky quality to it. And then lastly, Mosaic, which is a hop that is very hard to get your hands on these days, but they have these amazing relationships, and so they were able to procure enough Mosaic to make it a part of this beer. And thank God they did, because Mosaic is an amazing hop. It was bred from Simcoe, not quite as piney, a little bit more fruit forward. It's got that grapefruit, blueberry, hints of bubblegum, black pepper comes through, and really to me it kind of completes the aroma on this beer.
What would you pair this with?
So when I'm thinking about this as an Imperial IPA, I always love it. It's got big bitterness, of course, but also has a little bit of malt sweetness. I like to balance it against salts of all kinds. So I think ham, and that can be from like your classic spiral ham, all the way over to like a grilled ham and cheese sandwich would be fantastic with this, kind of cutting into the richness. Then you could do, more artisanal hams and salamis and charcuterie and things like that. But also, for me, like grilled steaks and grilled pork chops, there's like that kind of fruity note that would dress a pork chop well. And whenever you grill, you roast, and you get a little bit of char bitterness.
Yeah.
That works well with the hop bitterness here.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Delicious. Everyone, please always do drink responsibly, and be sure to bring your thirst next time for another beer of the week.